authors, have you ever wondered what a professional lawyer actually thinks about the contract connected to Kindle Unlimited, Kindle Select? We want to make sure that you are legally protected inside of this industry, so today we are talking to everybody's favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, and he has some feelings about the contract that Kindle Unlimited is offering. Let's jump in.
My name is Tony Casas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that is dedicated to all things intellectual property.
As authors and publishers, we have a lot of different options for publication of our novels. One option available to us is Kindle Unlimited, also called Kindle Select. This is where we have the opportunity to opt in for a set period of time and have our book exclusively housed inside of Amazon. Tony is going to break down everything we need to know about Kindle Unlimited, working with Kindle Select, and the contract that we are entering into. So, Tony, give us the overview.
So I had a chance to review the terms and conditions, and I'm going to say just on the onset, I was very alarmed at what I read. Certain provisions that I think are very pro-company in this case, as opposed to being pro-author. But we'll dive into some more specificity. But I want to say from the start that when you join the Kindle Unlimited program, which is KDP Select, according to the terms and conditions, Kindle Direct Publishing is the acronym for KDP. But when you join that program, you're agreeing to those terms and conditions unilaterally. Now, I want to stop there for a moment because for anybody that's an author out there, you know that when you work with a publisher, you always have the negotiation process. You have the ability to negotiate pricing and royalty revenue and terms and the other boilerplate provisions that are typical in a publishing agreement. That is non-existent with KDP Select's terms. That is just non-existent. What you're agreeing to is on a unilateral. You're agreeing to a unilateral contract. It's on a unilateral basis. Now, unilateral contracts are totally kosher. There's nothing wrong with a unilateral contract. They're fully enforceable. Contract law case precedent has made this extremely clear. No issues there whatsoever. The problem with that, though, is, of course, that when you're unilaterally agreeing to something and there is no room for negotiation, that I think weakens the argument for you to claim, some type of misappropriation or any sort of breach of a term of a contract or anything of that sort. Frankly, if you don't agree to the terms, the easy thing to do in a unilateral contract is you walk away. You just don't use them whatsoever. But once you sign on, you're pretty much hook, line, and sinker sucked into that deal. And it's very hard to have any room for negotiation in a situation like that. So unfortunately, that's the problem with the KDP Select terms and conditions right from the bat. But what I hate about it is essentially how restrictive this agreement is. And it took a while for me to even find it, which is also alarming itself. It's not quite, I had to search through like 5 different Google searches to find it. But when you go down through halfway basically through the KDP Select terms, there's a specific clause on exclusivity, which basically says that when you include a digital book on the KDP Select platform, you give KDP Select, or Amazon in this case, exclusive right to sell and distribute your digital book in digital format while your book is in KDP Select. And then this is what's important here. During this period of exclusivity, you cannot sell or distribute or give anyone else the right to sell or distribute your digital book or a book that is substantially similar in digital format in any territory where you have rights. That to me screams anti-competitive activity. That to me screams antitrust violations to some extent, if to the extent that it applies. But it also screams to me non-compete activity right there, which ironically, we've just done a video fairly recently on it, but the FTC, among all the other issues that deal with consumer fraud, has been on the forefront advocating for basically shutting down this whole non-compete clause language that is typical when employees leave an employer. So from the onset, I want to talk a little bit more about this antitrust activity here. So antitrust law, I'm not going to bore everybody with the details. It is quite boring. But the essence of it is that you're preventing fair competition in the marketplace. So I'll put a hypothetical here. Let's say you're walking down 42nd Street here in New York. You see McDonald's, you see Burger King, Raising Cane's. You have, some other restaurants like Planet Hollywood, so on and so forth. Imagine if all those restaurants were just McDonald's. You'd be sick and tired of McDonald's. But number 2, you now have no fair shot at shopping around for good food because the only options are McDonald's.
Right.
What if it were even McDonald's and Burger King? Even then, still no fair competition because you only have two choices to choose from, and one isn't better than the other. So the bottom line in a situation like that is that could raise serious concerns for antitrust activity. I'm going to say it straight up. Before recording, KM mentioned that she had been in this the publishing business for author business for about 6 years, and she recalls that this is as KDP Select has been around as long as she's been around. I am stunned. Okay, I am stunned that there has not been a class action lawsuit by authors against Amazon because of this condition alone. Because how do you prevent an author from a free marketplace? How do you prevent an author from being able to take their book, put it up on Amazon, but then go to Barnes and Noble, go to Script, go to any other platform that has a digital format where you can upload the book? How do you inhibit the author from that type of opportunity? To me, that feels very illegal. And to me, that's why I really, really hate this agreement. Of course, I also hate it because of this whole termination clause that's laid out here, that if you were to terminate, you're still governed under this exclusivity deal for a limited period, albeit it's 90 days. But I mean, 90 days is a lot. That feels like an eternity for an average author, because that could be 90 days worth of better sales on a different platform. Imagine 3 months worth of revenue that is lost out for that author in that situation. So to me, it feels like the author is severely disadvantaged from this terms. Of course, again, I could go into more explicit detail about the royalty rates and even the book eligibility thing, which again, I think that's more akin to like no different than when a publisher decides we don't like your book, it's not really in line with what the type of books we publish. So I totally get those types of provisions, but yeah, the exclusivity alone I think makes this agreement just oppressive, and it's like the author is shackled to an agreement that is unnecessarily restrictive. So I'm not a fan of Kindle Unlimited. If you didn't get the gist, TLDR, I don't like Kindle Unlimited.
It's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations recently in the publishing industry because this week we've had a little bit of an explosion. Kindle Unlimited authors have been faulted because people have stolen manuscripts, pirated them, and taken them and put them on other platforms. At which point, if Amazon then finds these, the author then gets blamed for violating those terms in the contract. So because of that exclusivity clause in there where we cannot have it in other places if we opt into Kindle Select, people are losing their entire author communities on the platform because of that violation of the rules. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, even because I'm just looking quickly at the terms, they even have certain provisions about rights clearances and rights dispute resolutions, where it basically says you will obtain and pay for any and all necessary clearances and licenses for the books to permit or exercise of the rights granted hereunder this agreement. So even just from that language alone, the onus is on the author for a situation like that. It's frankly, again, just shows how unilateral agreements are dangerous. They just are. In a normal agreement, if you saw this, you probably could finagle the system. You could probably figure out a way where you could exercise a more friendly term that both parties would agree to. But when you're agreeing a language like that or anything of that sort, it becomes way more problematic because you just can't. Once you sign on, it's basically an assumption of risk type of situation where you're just putting on a happy face, you smile, you move it along, and when something bad happens, you're on the hook for it. But in a situation like what you're talking about, I think this underlines all the more how certainly this is just from a more moral point of view, an ethical point of view, just how Amazon's I guess terms here just are not author friendly here. And frankly, this would inhibit any author from wanting to go into the Kindle space, which is a pretty big market for books. I mean, I mean, could you go down the standard Kindle route? Sure, but Kindle Unlimited is probably not the best option here. It's just not a sound process. And certainly, I think it would be important to dissuade any author to consider Kindle Unlimited in the future because, again, you're really going to you're entering anti-competitive waters at that point.
So at this point in the conversation, it is important to point out we do have lots of options as authors. You can be putting your content on Kindle without being in Kindle Unlimited, Kindle Select, or you can choose to be exclusive to them and not have your books wide and risk having to deal with the fallout of potential piracy, etc. It is wise to point out that the terms of the contract are 90 days. So you do have that 3-month period if you sign on. So if you are going to test out Kindle Select or Kindle Unlimited, it may be a smart choice to put your book in there first for those 90 days, then pull it and put it wide. It is definitely harder to have your book out in the public, then pull all of those manuscripts off and put it into Kindle Select. So you have to be intelligent about how you're going to do this, but you also want to take into consideration the terms that you are agreeing to when you opt into Kindle Unlimited. And as Tony said, it may not be the most valuable choice for you, especially because it is so unilateral and you cannot be making any changes to what is already existing there. So Tony, final thoughts on this before we wrap up?
I've talked about it before in previous videos that we've done, and I'm sure you could all find them in the links below. Shameless plug, of course. But I think, I think I've mentioned it more explicitly. I'll say it here because I think it's just worth reminding people. Contract law and negotiations are all about meeting of the minds. Think of like the proverbial table. You enter both sides. One party sits on one side of the table, the other party sits on the other side of the table. They have the banter. They have the agreements. They have the disagreements. Ultimately, it's worth a shot to at least say what you want, and the other party could just. The worst that's going to happen is the other party says no. But the best that could happen is that they say yes. And certainly, that's the essence of contract law at large. That you could have these types of disagreements and banter to ultimately get to some type of resolution. Essentially the agreement that lays out the terms that both parties agree to. When you have that absent in a situation like Kindle Unlimited, again, I caution authors to consider that type of option going forward, because you really do not have any opportunity to negotiate your terms. You just don't. There's no way around it. You can't retroactively negotiate it. Before you sign on, you can't talk to an Amazon rep because they're not going to agree to it. I mean, I believe even in the terms they said that there is no change. These you're signing this on an irrevocable basis practically. So it's like, wow, that's very, very disheartening. So I think for authors, especially the more independent ones who don't really have a big publisher behind their name, don't suck yourself into something like Kindle Unlimited. Shop around, because the name of the game in the publishing space is to build your credibility, build credibility behind your name. So what better way to do that than to have a wide net where you can upload your book in digital format to tons of different platforms, on top of having it in print format, having your book readily available. The more people buy it on different platforms, the more people are going to know, hey, I know who Cam Robinson is. I know who so-and-so is. That's how free marketplace activity is supposed to take place. Honestly, Kindle Unlimited assassinates that thought instantaneously once you sign it. So just be very careful when you sign on to Kindle Unlimited. I can't advocate it enough. If you have questions about signing Kindle Unlimited agreements, or signing onto the program and reading through their terms, consulting with your lawyer is going to be very important. Just to make sure you're doing it right and you feel comfortable with it. And listen, if you have no problem limiting your products to one platform, fine. I mean, good on you. But I think for the average person, I think that's a little bit more of an inhibition as opposed to something that is beneficial.
It is something where we just have to toggle a button on and off to opt into these things, but it's important to remember this really truly is a contract. You are signing this contract. It may be easy for you to do, but it's important not to skim through it and just kind of glance over the fine print. It is wise to check in with your lawyer, make sure that they have some kind of oversight on this so that you understand what you're truly opting into before you do this, easy as it is, to make sure you're making the best decision for you. Tony, thank you so much for breaking down Kindle Unlimited's terms for us today. If people have questions, they can drop those down below. We're happy to get these answered in upcoming episodes of Tony, or you can reach out to Tony on his social medias. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the IP Professor.
Now, I'm sure you have questions about this, so go ahead and drop those down below. We want to make sure we're keeping you legally protected inside of the publishing industry, so now's the time to drop your questions. It can be about the contracts connected to some of these different entities. It can be about other things as well. We have a full playlist of which we'll link down below for you, and Tony's coming back for more episodes. We film every single week for you to make sure you're legally protected in this space, so drop your questions down below. We can also talk all things marketing, writing, and living your best life as an author, so we want to make sure we're dropping those daily videos to help you level up based on what you need from us. So now's the time to let us know, and we'll see you in the next episode.